Thank you all for coming and for feeling that there is hope, that there might be some hope around and that there is a vision that could be hopeful. We have been working at the grassroots now for almost 40 years. And we believe, many of us believe, that the main problem we face is a lack of understanding of the workings of the global economy. We believe that with a clearer understanding of that global economy, we will be much more activated and clearer about the need to strengthen local economies worldwide as an urgent and essential priority. We call our film The Economics of Happiness because localizing is an essential step towards rebuilding the fabric of connection between people and between humankind and the natural world. We also want to stress that the economics of happiness is also an economics of survival. We are now entering a period where there is as we know, an urgent need for fundamental change. Very quickly, we need to get the word out that we mustn't stay caught in a theater of politics. We must not remain at the level of what is happening at the nation state and the television theater that goes on playing with our emotions on social issues and absolutely obscuring the real name of the game. And the real name of the game has actually been a very long history of accumulation and extraction on the part of a few to the detriment of the many and to the detriment of the planet itself. Having seen, as I did in this remote part on the Tibetan plateau, Ladakh, having seen what happened when a culture, an economy, a people, a landscape that had evolved and changed and developed according to its own priorities over many, many centuries, having seen what happened when that area was suddenly thrown open to the economic forces in the global economy, I have been, passionately trying to raise awareness about the urgent need for us to focus on that corporate-led global economy. I saw how in just a few years, in the name of growth, unemployment was created. I saw how subsidized systems of extraction, particularly for fossil fuels, governments subsidizing fossil fuels and the infrastructure for global trade, meant that suddenly butter came traveling in from the other side of the Himalayas, having been transported for a week, full of formaldehyde so that it wouldn't melt, sold for half the price of local butter. In a way, I would like us to think about the fact, well, first of all, many of us don't know this, but I assure you that this is true. I have traveled to Mongolia, to Kenya, to around the world, and have found that this is true. And what is true is that around the world, fresh, perishable food that comes from a mile away will often cost twice as much as processed, irradiated, dead food from 10,000 miles away. This is just a symbol, but also a reality that tells us something about the injustice and the manipulation in the global economy. So in one way to think about localization is to think about working for a world where every child and every family has the right to have fresh local food at a reasonable price. What will it take for us to make changes in the world to bring that about? And we must recognize that the right to fresh, healthy food is a fundamental human right. We need to put that at the center of the new agenda. We haven't been aware that in the name of free trade treaties, most governments, in fact all to my knowledge, are encouraging the import and export of identical products. The US export, when we last did the research, when we first did our book, Bringing the Food Economy Home, the US at that time was exporting about 900,000 tons of beef and turning around and importing roughly 900,000 tons of beef. We found that in the same period, the UK was exporting as much butter and milk as it was importing. And locally, farmers would tell me, oh, well, it's because in Belgium they need our milk because it's much higher quality to make the good, high-quality chocolates. That's why we are exporting our milk and we're getting other milk imported. That was a myth that was being promoted as part of a system that is blindly promoted at so many different levels. In many ways, we don't realize how often we fall into the trap of promoting an agenda which, way out there in the landscape of the global economy, ends up strangling us. I often talk about it as our arms have grown so long, we can't see what our hands are doing, and our hands come back to strangle us. This can sound a bit bleak, it can sound a bit dreary, but the key message, the key part of the vision of hope has to do with a faith in human nature. We are not aware how much and how often we have been told that what we have today is a consequence of human nature. It's heartbreaking for me to have many colleagues who have battled away in political movements, in environmental movements, social movements, who now, many of them are saying, I give up. The human race is greedy and just deserves to extinguish itself. This is at the absolute center of the vision of hope. The faith in human beings, the faith in human nature. What I have seen, not just in Ladakh, but in Bhutan, where there was an equally dramatic opening up, having been sealed off for generations, politically sealed off from modernity, from growth, seeing those regions opening up is what opened my eyes. It led me to go back to Scandinavia, I'm from Sweden originally, and join the campaigns against joining the EU. Many of you may still think of the EU as a relatively benevolent counterpoint to the United States, and it has been that, but we need to recognize that it is an economic union that was brought about because big business at the European level found different languages, different currencies, different driving on left and right, different forms of measurement, inefficient. This is another key element of understanding the need from global to local, is to understand that global giants in the form of big, unaccountable businesses cannot respect diversity. So at a very practical level, they set about encouraging and pushing nations to form this economic union for the efficiency of a borderless Europe, reducing the diversities, bringing in one currency, bringing in one way of looking at things, one central bank, and essentially it was in competition with the United States. Essentially behind the scenes, it was big businesses competing with big businesses elsewhere. I want to stress that as I talk about big business and talk about the enormous destruction that they've inflicted on the planet, I myself am convinced through many years of experience of talking to business leaders, talking to government leaders, that this is not a consequence of their individual human inferiority, greed, selfishness. I have known many business leaders who have sincerely wanted to see a more sustainable, a more equitable planet or country, well, their own nation state, but the blind rush towards so-called freedom, democracy, free trade was seen as the only alternative to communism, which clearly hadn't worked very well. It was a centralized top-down system that was also anti-ecological, that also didn't recognize the diversity of culture and human identity. But a blind rush down in a tunnel vision is something that is the main driver of this system. Of course, the Koch brothers, the billionaires of the planet are not going to be particularly eager to look for a different view, to look for an understanding that the main central problem has been the corporate and banking structures behind government. Going bigger and bigger and more global forces you into a rat race of searching the world for the cheapest labor. It forces you into a speed and into a blindness that means that you end up promoting, as I said before, monoculture, but also what's being promoted is now a system of jobless growth. Linked to the system of scale, of globalizing, is the assumption that more science and technology is what creates jobs, is what creates prosperity. We are dealing with blind leaders who have lost sight of the fact that every single thing we need, every single thing that the economy produces, from our cell phones to our carrots, comes from the earth, from living Mother Earth. And that living Mother Earth is diversity, breathes diversity, can only survive with diversity. Not only is every single carrot different from every other carrot, it is different from moment to moment. It's a process of life in a cycle that is how we are here, how we have our cell phones, how we have our carrots. Waking up to the reality of the real economy, this is our job. We need to spell this out. We need to lay out a clear vision, a clear paradigm that is based on an economic literacy rooted in ecological literacy. But as I said earlier, part of it is also a human literacy, waking up to the fact that every baby that's born longs for love and connection. Every baby wants to be nurtured and loved. We need to recognize how the economic system has been a knife cutting through relationships, through our relational, interdependent selves. We need to learn a lot from indigenous traditions, from the New Age spiritual movement, from the most spiritual traditions that teach us about the oneness of life. That's at the heart of most religions and spiritual traditions. The oneness of life and the need for love and compassion. That's at the heart of most religions and spiritual traditions. This is part of the localization vision, is understanding those spiritual connections. Sadly, we have had a critique of corporations, a critique of globalization that has neglected the spiritual and ecological foundations, and that has not been in touch with the huge amount that's happening at the grassroots. Today you will be hearing more about that, well, all day long, but especially in the afternoon when we launch the International Alliance. But there is a reality out there that is actually demonstrating, particularly in the local food movement, demonstrating concretely that you can increase productivity, increase efficiency and productivity by shortening the distances. The local markets are an essential structure for rebuilding the health of ecosystems. In the long-distance system, the corporate technological system demands carrots that fit the technology, the harvesting technology, the washing technology, the supermarket shelves technology, standard size, standard color, and if you don't create that, dump it, burn it. That system is, as I say, not just born of the blind greed of the Koch brothers and some billionaires. That system has come about because a lot of us have participated in a belief in efficiency, a belief that bigger is better, that faster is better. But here we can now see what's happening at the local level as people rebuild more diversified, more community-based structures. We can actually see a healing. Even in rifts, ethnic rifts, racist rifts start healing as people rebuild the interdependence at the local level. Localizing is not a guarantee for peace, joy, and sustainability, but it's a prerequisite for peace, joy, and sustainability. So I hope you'll join us in this effort to get this vision out, and that you will listen to the voices from the ground. We represent a movement of, well, our writings have been translated into 50 different languages, so we've had contact with 50 different language groups over these last 3-4 decades, and they are speaking from the ground up, looking at that global system, and we're creating a united voice to say, please help us make that shift. And you can start right now. We will be giving you ideas about what you can do. What can you do? We'll be talking about that later today. Thank you.